I woke up from surgery alone to 14 missed calls. My kids had been sitting on a porch for 3 hours. My parents were at a salon. When I called my mom, she said, "Your sister needed us more." I was home by 9 p.m. So was my lawyer. I woke up tasting anesthesia and reached for my phone before I could fully see the room. This is what single mothers do. You come out of sedation and your first coherent thought is not about your own body. It's about your children. Where are they? Who has them? Are they okay? I had 14 missed calls from Margaret Doyle. Margaret is 73 years old. She lives next door. She has my number for genuine emergencies only. She uses it the way her generation uses emergency numbers, which is to say sparingly, with gravity, and never for things that can wait. She has called me twice in 4 years. Once when she thought she smelled gas. Once when she saw someone trying my back gate. 14 calls. I pressed her name before I'd finished reading the texts. She picked up before the first ring finished. Whitney. Her voice had the specific quality of someone who has been holding themselves together for a long time and is only now starting to let go of the effort. Your kids are here. They're okay. Oliver is watching a movie. Sophie just fell asleep on my couch. I was lying in a hospital bed with an IV in my left arm and a surgical gown that kept slipping off my shoulder, and I said, "What happened?" "Your parents left at 11:30. I saw their car pull out when I was trimming the hedge. I looked over. I don't know why, I just looked over, and the children were sitting on the porch alone." 11:30. My surgery had started at 11:15. Sophie was crying, Margaret said. Oliver had his arm around her. He told me Grandpa said they'd be back in an hour. A pause. That was 3 hours ago. 7 years old. Oliver was 7 years old, and he had his arm around his 5-year-old sister on a porch in May because every adult had left. "Are you all right?" Margaret said. "You sound strange." "I just woke up from surgery," I said. Silence. Then, quietly, "Oh, Whitney." I counted 8 seconds on the heart monitor above my bed. Then I called my mother. "My name is Whitney Walsh. I am 36 years old. I have 2 children, Oliver, 7, and Sophie, 5. I work as a project coordinator for a civil engineering firm, which means I spend my professional days managing timelines and dependencies and the specific costly consequences of people not doing what they said they would do when they said they would do it. I have been doing this professionally for 9 years. I have been doing it personally, with my family, for considerably longer. My mother is Diane Walsh. She is 62 years old and has a talent for warmth. Genuine, practiced, available warmth that she deploys with the generous ease of someone who has never once had to calculate whether she can afford it, because the cost has always been paid by someone else. She is the person strangers like immediately. She is the person neighbors describe as wonderful. She is, in the specific experience of her elder daughter, the person who is wonderful to everyone until being wonderful becomes inconvenient, at which point she says your sister needed us more and hangs up on you in a hospital recovery room. My sister is Amber. She is 30 years old, lives 12 minutes from our parents, and has maintained a relationship with them that is best described as full service. They show up for everything. They attend everything. They are available for everything. I do not resent Amber this. I resent the mathematics of it. The fact that their capacity for presence is apparently finite, and she has first claim on it by virtue of proximity, personality, and a lifelong habit of asking. My father is Ray Walsh. He is 65, retired, and functions in our family the way a cosigner functions on a loan, present on the paperwork, not the one making the payments. He agrees with my mother the way some men agree with weather, without resistance, because resistance to something that inevitable seems beside the point. I had scheduled the surgery for a Tuesday in May, because Tuesdays in May are school days, which meant I needed someone to handle pickup at 3:15 and dinner and bedtime, and my parents had said yes. They had said yes 6 weeks earlier when I asked, and they had confirmed 2 days before, and my mother had said, "Don't worry about anything. You focus on yourself. Don't worry about anything." I went under at 11:15 a.m. believing my children were accounted for. They were on a porch. Sophie was crying. Oliver had his arm around her. My mother picked up on the third ring. Cheerful, breezy, the voice she uses for calls she is pleased to receive. "Hi, sweetheart. How did it go?" I lay in the hospital bed with the IV and the surgical gown and said, "Where are my children?" A beat. The calculating pause. I have heard this pause my entire life. The half-second gap between what she has just heard and how she has decided to respond to it. It sounds like silence. It is not silence. It is processing. "Oh, Mrs. Doyle called you," she said. Not a question. Acknowledgement that she was now working with a specific information landscape. "Your father took Amber to..." Listen, she had a last-minute cancellation at her salon. You know how hard it is to get Ricardo. He takes forever to get an appointment. They were on the porch, I said. Sophie was crying. "Well, Mrs. Doyle was right there. She lives next door. She saw them through her hedge. She was available. She is 73 years old, and she was trimming her hedge when she noticed that my children had been abandoned on a porch. Nobody abandoned anyone. Why did you leave?" The pause was longer this time. Then, 7 words, delivered with the patience of someone explaining the obvious. "Your sister needed us more." I lay there, and I counted the beeps on the heart monitor, and I counted 8 of them, and then I said, "Don't come to my house. Don't call my children." I hung up. I lay in the hospital bed for a while. Then I made one more call to the discharge nurse's station to ask about the release process. She said I needed someone to pick me up. I told her my neighbor would come. That was not true. Margaret doesn't drive anymore. She stopped 2 years ago when her night vision got bad. I knew this when I said it. I said it anyway because because I needed to be discharged and I had no one else. And the truth was not going to change that. And the lie was at least functional. I drove myself home at 5 p.m. The surgical site ached on left turns. The discharge paperwork said, "Do not drive," in bold text at the top of page 2. I drove anyway because Oliver and Sophie were at Margaret's, and I had to get them, and there was no one else. There is a particular kind of alone that comes not from the absence of people, but from the absence of people who show up. I have been a single mother for 3 years. I know the first kind well. The empty chair at dinner, the single adult in a sea of couples at school events, the quiet of a house after bedtime that is yours and only yours. I have made my peace with most of that. The second kind is different. The second kind is what you discover when you thought you weren't alone and find out you were. Margaret had pot roast. I don't know when she'd made it. It was on the stove when I came through her door at 5:40, and either she had been planning dinner when this started or she had made it during the 3 hours she'd had my children, because she is the kind of person who manages crisis through feeding. She handed me a bowl before I'd gotten my coat off. Oliver hugged me around the waist and held on for a long time without speaking. Sophie was still half asleep on the couch, the quilt Margaret keeps folded over the armrest pulled up to her chin. I sat at Margaret's kitchen table and ate pot roast, and listened to Oliver tell me about the movie he'd watched, which was something about a dog. And I kept my voice normal because children read the frequency of your voice even when they can't parse the words. And what Oliver needed from me in that moment was the frequency of normal. Margaret sat across from me and watched me eat, and did not say anything about any of it. When the kids were settled with dessert in the living room, she leaned across the table and said quietly, "I wrote down what time they left, in case you need it." She had a notepad beside her cutting board with a time and a brief notation in her handwriting. 11:28 a.m. Walsh car departed. Children alone on porch, both crying. I looked at the notepad. "Can I take a photo of that?" She pushed it across the table without a word. I drove us home at 7. I gave the kids baths and read to Sophie twice because she asked twice, and I said yes both times. I tucked Oliver in, and he said, "Mom, I wasn't scared," in the voice that means he had been. "I know," I said. "You were very brave." Sophie was scared. "I know. You took care of her." He thought about this. "Grandpa said they'd be back." "I know. They weren't." "I know, buddy." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is everything okay?" "Everything is okay," I said. "I'm home. You're home. Sophie's home. Everything is okay." I turned the light off. I went downstairs. I opened Instagram. Amber's most recent post. 10:48 a.m. salon chair. Black cape. Ricardo. I assumed based on the caption, which read emergency glam sesh. Mom came through last minute. 10:48 a.m. My surgery had started at 11:15. They had been at the salon when my children were still in the house. They had left for the salon, a 40-minute drive minimum, while they were still supposed to be watching my children, which meant they had left my children, or made the decision to leave them, before I was even under anesthesia. I scrolled. My mother's comment on Amber's post. 3 red hearts. Anything for my girl. Anything for my girl. Next post. 1:30 p.m. Amber and my mother at a cafe. Marble table. Iced lattes. Sunlight through the window at the specific golden angle that means you've been there a while and the afternoon has caught up with you. Post-salon brunch with my bestie, aka my mom. 1:30 p.m. I was in recovery at 1:30, alone, trying to focus my eyes enough to read Margaret's texts. Oliver was making Sophie a peanut butter sandwich in a stranger's kitchen because he is 7 years old, and he understood that Sophie was hungry, and he is, in every way that matters, a better person at 7 than the adults who left him on that porch. I looked at the 2 photos for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, and I opened a new document, and I typed 6 things in a list. I put the document in a folder I labeled May. Then I went to bed. I did not sleep for a long time. The following morning, I called Sandra Klein. Sandra Klein is a family law and estate attorney with 22 years of practice. She had done my divorce 3 years earlier, and she had done it with the specific, no unnecessary words efficiency of someone who has helped a lot of people restructure their lives and understands that the work is best done cleanly. I had her number in my phone under Sandra K. Call directly. I called directly. I told her what I needed. Guardianship documentation updated, power of attorney changed, medical directive revised, beneficiary designations amended. I told her I needed it this week. She was quiet for a moment. Then, who are we removing? I told her. Another moment. And who are we adding? I told her that too. Claire Walsh, my ex-husband Marcus's sister, who has 2 children of her own and has been a consistent, present presence in Oliver and Sophie's lives for 3 years, and who had, when I texted her the previous night, responded within 4 minutes with whatever you need, whenever. I mean it. I can have the documents ready Thursday, Sandra said. 2 hours in my office. Thursday works, I said. Then I called Dale from Ridgeview Lock and Key. Dale has been doing locksmith work in our neighborhood for 11 years. He is the kind of person who does not require context. You tell him what you need and he brings the tools and does the work and sends an invoice that is always exactly what he quoted. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. He came Wednesday morning. 2 new deadbolts. New garage code. 3 brass keys cut. 1 for Claire Walsh, 1 for Margaret, 1 for me. I put the old key, the one my mother had, the one I'd given her 2 years ago when she asked for it, in case of emergency, in the junk drawer under the takeout menus, not thrown away, just placed somewhere that acknowledged its new status as a thing that no longer opened anything. Thursday, I went to Ridgeview Elementary before the first bell. Mrs. Holt has been at the front desk for 15 15 years. She is in her early 60s, and she has, in those 15 years, seen every configuration of family crisis that produces a parent standing at her counter with a form to update. She watched me draw a single line through two names on the authorized pickup form, Diane Walsh and Ray Walsh, with the steady, unhurried attention of someone who knows when to be quiet. She initialed the change without comment. At the door, I turned. "Thank you, Mrs. Holt." "Of course," she said, just that. Thursday afternoon, Sandra Klein's office. Cream walls, good light, the particular order of a woman who has spent 22 years managing other people's documentation and keeps her own with proportional care. 3 documents, 6 signatures, a notary stamp. My parents. Removed from guardianship, removed from power of attorney, removed from medical directive. Claire Walsh. Added to all 3. She'll need to sign her own acknowledgement, Sandra told me. I'll send it directly. She's expecting it, I said. Friday, I called the insurance company. Kevin in the Beneficiary Management Center confirmed the change in 9 minutes and sent the updated confirmation to my email before we hung up. By Saturday morning, the list in the folder labeled May had 6 lines through it, 6 walls. Not threats, not revenge, just paperwork. The kind that nobody notices until they try a key and the deadbolt doesn't move. They came the following Sunday. I had not told them to come. I had not called since the hospital. Neither had my father. Amber had texted once, "Mom said you're upset, can we talk?" which I had read and not replied to. They came anyway, the 3 of them, in the early afternoon with a pot roast in a Dutch oven. The specific pot roast my mother makes for situations where she wants to establish that everything is normal and she is a generous person, and whatever happened can be absorbed into the ongoing warmth of the family. I was in the kitchen when I heard them on the porch. I put the manila folder on the counter. I tucked it against my hip. I went to the door. My mother reached for the handle automatically, the gesture of someone who has been entering this house with her own key for 2 years and has not yet updated her behavioral pattern for new information. She put the key in, turned it. The deadbolt didn't move. She tried it again, slower the second time. With the patience of someone who has encountered a stiff lock before and believes the problem is technique, the deadbolt didn't move. I opened the door from the inside. White blouse, hair back, the manila folder against my hip. My mother opened her arms. "Whitney, we brought pot roast. The key doesn't work anymore," I said. Her arms came down. I held up the first document. Ridgeview Elementary authorized pickup form. Their names. A single horizontal line drawn through each one in black pen. Mrs. Holt's initials beside each deletion. Oliver and Sophie's school pickup list, I said. "You're no longer authorized to collect them." My mother's face went through several things in quick succession. The second document. Guardianship codicil. In the event something happens to me, Oliver and Sophie go to Claire Walsh, Marcus's sister. I looked at my father. "You know Claire." "We know Claire," my father said. His voice was neutral, but he was holding the pot roast and he looked suddenly like someone who has carried something a long way and is not sure where to set it down. Third document. Power of attorney and medical directive. If I'm incapacitated, Claire makes decisions, not you. My mother had found her voice. "Whitney, you're being the insurance confirmation." I held up the last page. Beneficiary updated. Amber stepped forward. She had been standing slightly behind our parents with the expression of someone who has come to support a position and is now receiving information that complicates the position. "You changed your life insurance?" "I changed everything that needed changing." "These aren't threats," I said. "They're changes I've already made. They're done." My mother's composure fractured the way composure fractures when it is performance rather than substance. Not a crack, but a sudden absence. The performance simply stopping. The thing underneath it surfacing. "I am your mother," she said. "I have given you everything." I opened my phone. I turned the screen toward her. The salon photo. 10:48 a.m. Ricardo with a comb. Amber in the chair. My mother's comment underneath. "Anything for my girl." "You posted this 45 minutes before my surgery started," I said, "while you were still at my house, while my children were still in your care." I scrolled. The cafe photo. 1:30 p.m. 2 iced lattes. Marble table. I was in recovery at 1:30, reaching for my phone with shaking hands. Oliver was making Sophie a peanut butter sandwich in Margaret's kitchen because he understood she was hungry and he is 7 years old. My mother's mouth opened, closed. "Margaret has a notepad," I said. "She wrote down the time your car left, 11:28 a.m. She wrote down what she saw. I let that land, in case I needed it." My father was looking at the pot roast. The same ground, different surface. I stepped back. "I'm going to close the door now," I said. "You don't need a key for something that's already closed." I closed the door. The new deadbolt clicked. Brass on brass. Clean and final and mine. Through the kitchen window I could see the backyard and the afternoon light on the grass, and, at the table just visible through the interior doorway, Oliver with his crayons, his tongue pressed to the corner of his mouth the way it is when he is concentrating. I stood at the window for a moment. Then I went to see what he was drawing. A house, 4 walls, a triangle roof, a door with a yellow rectangle for a window, 4 stick figures inside, 1 tall, 2 medium, 1 one small. Colors everywhere. The particular dense application of wax crayon that means someone is not sketching, but committing. Outside the house, at some distance from the door, one more figure. Alone. No colors, just outline. He had written one word next to it, Grandma. I stood and looked at his drawing for a long time. Then I sat down beside him and I said, "Can I have some of the blue?" He handed me the blue without looking up. We sat at the table together while the afternoon light shifted and the pot roast on the porch went cold, and the new locks held the doors. 4 months later, Claire Walsh has a key. She uses it twice a week, Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, when she picks Oliver and Sophie up from school and brings them to her house until I'm off work. She texts me when they arrive. She texts me when they ask for a snack. She texts me things I didn't ask for and don't need. Sophie learned to cartwheel today because she has decided that I should know all of it, and I have decided she is right. Margaret still has a key. She has used it once when I locked myself out in November and called her from the driveway in the rain, and she appeared at my back door in her housecoat with the key and a look of magnificent "I told you," so that she was too polite to say out loud. I made her tea. We sat in my kitchen for an hour. She still has the notepad. It's in a kitchen drawer. I have not needed it. My mother texted twice. Both times the texts had a quality of careful construction, the quality of messages written with awareness of their own potential future significance, measured and reasonable and designed to look, in retrospect, like the actions of someone who tried. I read them both. I have not replied to either. My father called once in October on a Sunday afternoon. We talked for 11 minutes. He said he should have said something at the hospital. He should have called from the salon. He should have done something when he saw the car pull out of my driveway at 11:28. He said I should have 3 times in 11 minutes. I said, I know. That was all I had for him right now. Maybe there is more later. I am leaving that question open the way you leave a window open in early spring. Not because you're sure of the weather, but because you want the option of air. Oliver drew me a second picture last month. Same house, same 4 figures inside. Claire's car in the driveway, recognizable by the curly antenna he drew on top, because Claire has a specific antenna on her Subaru that Oliver finds hilarious. No figure outside. No lone outline by the door. I taped it to the refrigerator. Some pictures deserve to be where you see them every morning.